We're excited to have Julie with us today. And Julie is the executive director of Mining, Minnesota. She's served in local elected office, has degrees from the University of Minnesota Duluth in biochemistry and biology, and a master's in biology. And I just wanted to do a brief intro so we can let Julie share more about her. So Julie, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a lesson that you might have learned from your grandmother or another important older woman in your life.
There's so many lessons. You said we don't necessarily have a time limit on this. So
No.
I would say, well, first, thank you for including me on
Yeah.
this.
I know
I'm
I jumped right into it. I'm like, oh.
No, I'm super excited to be here today. So thank you so much. It's great to see you. One of the biggest lessons I learned early in life were from both my grandmas was resilience. So resilience in not just maintaining strength through really tough times, but maintaining humor through really tough times. I would say that was a key lesson that you can be a strong person. You don't have to be a hard person. Life is hard enough. You don't have to be hard. You can have lightness, you can have joy, and if you have humor, you can get through a lot of things a lot easier. So I don't think I realized until I was older how difficult my grandmothers, both of them, how difficult their lives had been. And the fact that I didn't know that as a kid tells me how great of a job they did in just not just surviving their lives, but just thriving and just being amazing women.
I love that. And when one of the other questions that we always like to start out with, besides that, is, what's your connection to rural? And tell us a little bit about that.
So just rural in general or on a
Rural in
rural.
general. Yeah.
So funny story. I love telling people this story. So I grew up in a tiny little town called Barnum, 460 people. I graduated with 62 people in my class. And when I became an adult, I went to college at UMD. So I went to Duluth, what I thought was a huge bustling city. And it is, I mean, for me, it still is a big city. But I love telling people the story. When I went to buy my first house in the city of Virginia, Minnesota, I qualified for a rural home development loan. And I was meeting with the bank and they said, well, you could get this rural first time home buyer loan. And I said, rural? I said, no, I'm buying a house in Virginia, like in town.
It's like,
And
yeah.
they said, yeah, Virginia doesn't have, populations less than 10,000. This is rural. And I just remember like that blowing my mind. I thought, there's 9,000 people. This isn't rural. So I have been rural my whole life with apparently no actual concept of what that means. So I grew up in a tiny little, like I said, tiny little farm, 80 acres down in Barnum. And then my mom lived in Moose Lake, which isn't much bigger. And so bounced around there and lived in the bustling metropolis of Virginia, Minnesota for 6 years, and then moved I'm out in Side Lake now. So Side Lake is a little, we're actually just a township, or French Township is how we're organized. We have 600 some people year round. Summertime, we blow up to 3,000 or so. It's a cabin-ish, it's cabin country. But I'm lucky enough to live here year round. So that's where I am now. So I'm not a big city person. When I lived in Duluth, I regularly escaped to Duluth has an amazing park system with the rivers that run through Duluth. So I was always having to escape to the woods. Just where I just where I belong is in the woods apparently.
Yeah. And I love it because, like you, I grew up but I grew up in southern Minnesota, not northern Minnesota, but, and I'm lucky right now that I get to live up by you. So I get
Yeah,
to live in a whole different, the whole forest piece and, living in lake country, but being able to live there year round is, absolutely incredible. It definitely has its challenges and
100%.
100%, but beauty and, great people. So I think
Yep.
that's what really keeps us there. And what an opportunity to, be in nature. So I love that. But tell us a little bit more about you, your work. And I know you do a lot of community engagement. So tell us a little
I,
bit about
I
that.
wish I could do more. It's hard now. So it's so hard to know where to start. I'm getting old enough now that I feel like my biography is getting long,
I know.
but
I hear you.
it's so I work in the mining space. So I never knew anything about mining growing up. I didn't grow up in a mining town. I grew up, like I said, in a little farming town. My idea of mining was sand and gravel operations, where everybody sneaks in to steal agates because that's what Moose Lake area is known for is agates. So I knew nothing about mining, but I did my master's thesis was water resources science was on two little lakes in the city of Virginia. So that's how I first got exposed to the Iron Range. And when I graduated, I my first job was actually teaching biology at the community college in Virginia at was called Mesabi Range at the time. And I moved up to the range knowing nothing about mining. And every week, the glassware in my lab would chink against itself, ching, 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 ching. And I was like, why does nobody care that we keep having these little earthquakes? And one of my students had to tell me that it was a blast. And I had no idea what blasting was. I had no idea what mining was. And well, I decided I wanted to stay on the range. And to do that, I needed a job because I was only temporarily teaching. And so I went to work for an environmental consulting firm that did work for the mines. So that's how I first got into mining was through the environmental pathway. And frankly, I really struggled with that at first because I've always considered myself an environmentalist. I straight up call myself a tree hugger, proud of that. I love nature, and I really wrestled with working for mining companies, and but I also just living on the range, that is where our impact is. So if you want to protect the earth, you should work for the industry that affects the earth. And on the Iron Range, that's mining. You know, had I moved to western or southern Minnesota through the fates of life, probably would have worked in agriculture, probably would have worked in some other field. So I've been working in mining for over 20 years now. And like I said, I started environmental. I was the environmental manager at one of the taconite mines for over a decade. It was awesome. Loved it. Boots on the ground. And it was awesome experience. And then I pivoted. Whole A lot of life is just pivoting from one thing to the other. I don't know that you ever fully do a turn. You just do a lot of pivots.
Yeah.
And now I run an organization called Mining Minnesota. We do public relations, government relations, education for the mining industry, particularly everything not iron, so copper, nickel, um, manganese, and helium, actually. Because why wouldn't Minnesota also have helium? We're just filling up the periodic table. So just keep pivoting. And one solid thing through all of it is just education. I love science and I love educating people on science. So that's been the one consistent.
I think that's what's amazing, and that's what I want women to see is that pivoting is a great way to describe what you've done in your career and how you have such transferable skills. You don't really realize that you have those. And then it's
Mm-mm.
like, oh, yeah, because everything you do, you can transfer into someone else. It's something else. It might be a different, different language sometimes that we use in
Yep.
different industries, but very similar. And I know you've served in a local elected office. Can you tell us a little bit
Yeah, I
about
was
that?
township supervisor. I did one term. I would have done more, but it's this when was first elected, I was in a different job where I was home every night. And so it was easy to be in that role. And then when I took this role, I'm not or last year I spent about 70 nights in hotels.
Oof.
So I recognize that I wasn't able to really properly be a township supervisor, but I did my 3 years. And uh, hopefully when I transition out of this job at some point, because I'd like to retire at some point, uh, love to run again because what I love about rural communities is not just as an elected official. What I love about rural communities is that you can really get involved and you can really make a big impact. Like one person counts as a lot in a small community. And as a township supervisor, you get to do the things that make a community how do you the baseline of a community, good roads, good infrastructure, a good recreation center. good programming for kids, just the basic things that build the quality of life that they're not flashy, they're but they're the base of everything, and you get to do that as a township supervisor, and you get to meet different people in your community, and you get to just make sure that things are functioning well, and it's not glamorous work by any stretch. I love that it's nonpartisan. I love that it's all about just basic governance, being responsible with tax money and turning it into a healthy community. It's just I love that aspect of local government.
Yeah, and so I think this is always a question too. It's like, why did you, did you know about townships, or why did you run for a township board?
I I'm sure there was some arm twisting in there. It's I had already been involved with our community. So in 2015, so we live so Side Lake is about 25 minutes north of Chisholm and about half hour away from Hibbing. So I really wanted fitness class, and there were no fitness classes without having to drive to town, and I didn't want to drive to town, so I started my own. So I started teaching fitness classes at the rec center. I got certified, taught fitness classes for women. Well, men were invited, they just didn't show up. I had one gentleman who consistently showed up. But I started this organization called Side Lake Strong, and we did fitness classes twice a week. We did hikes, snowshoes, kayak things out here, and just got to know a lot of people in the community. But because I was doing this up at the recreation center, which is also where our township board holds their meetings, just started to get more involved with understanding how our township functioned because I was using their primary building twice a week for these classes. And so just learning through that world, just building out that network of people that keep our township is run by a handful of people. And most people have no idea that, if there's a storm and trees have to get cleared off the township roads, most people have no idea who's actually out there clearing up the township roads. They don't know who's on the fire department. They don't know who's running our EMS, all of that stuff. And I got to see all of that. So then when a gentleman who had been on the board was stepping down after 20 some years of being on the township board, he asked me if I was interested. And it's kind of a, well, why not? Like, let's do this and let's see how this functions. And it was good. I was glad I did it.
Yeah, I think if people don't really realize what happens in local government sometimes, so it is that exposure piece, and
Yeah.
and it just sort of reminds you too that ask, tell. I mean, ask
Yeah.
people to run. Tell people, hey, you'd be good at this. I think that's a big thing for women in particular is letting them know, God, you'd be really good at this. You need to take a shot at that. And I'm not on township board, but I'm on a township on our business development community. We invest economic development dollars in our township, and that's been a really interesting thing to be part of and
Yep.
watch the town board and how they function. And I think we were the only township in Minnesota. And Marcel, we had 3 women
Oh, that's
supervisors, which
right. I
was
remember you
pretty
telling me
incredible.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. But it's a good group, and I have a friend who is on the Waconia Township board, and she always used to say purest form of government, but
It
it
is.
is it's one of those things where people don't know a lot about it. But what I like too is, the opportunity for the communities to come in once a year and say and
Yep.
you can go anytime, but to come in and talk about what's important and what you want to see. So it's a very grassroots
It
type
is.
form of government.
I was talking to one of my colleagues, she's my coworker. Shouldn't really call her a colleague. She's my coworker, but she lives a quarter mile down the road from me.
I love it.
So we have an organization with 2 full-time employees, and we live within a quarter mile of each other. And she's our deputy clerk for our township
Ah, mm-hmm.
because our clerk has been in his role for 20 plus years. He'd like to not always do it. He was smart enough to recognize he needs to have a succession
That's
plan.
great.
So she's been learning all of that. And, we regularly talk about how we want more people to show up and more people to understand what's going on. But we were talking about that phrase, many hands make for light lifting. And the challenge in a rural community is you don't have many hands.
Right, right, right.
So there's going to be this awesome winter fest. And it's a handful of people that put on this winter festival that has 500 people come to it because people will come from Chisholm and Hibbing and other areas. and it's a handful of people that are doing all this heavy lifting because there aren't that many, and it's what's hard is you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't have time to volunteer. I don't have time to volunteer." Do you have any time? Like, you don't have to volunteer and have it be 10 hours a week. We may just need somebody to just do you have 2 hours a month? Is it
Right.
a can you is there anything you can do? Because when you're in a rural community, you just can't afford for people to all be checked out and
Yeah.
not be contributing. You need everybody on board doing all the things. It's kinda like if you go to school at a small high school. How many people did you graduate with?
Well, we had a big class, 75,
So
but
you get
we
it. So,
like, yeah,
uh
it was small, small.
yeah, small school. So, in
Mhm.
our school, we didn't have tryouts for sports. We didn't have we didn't have waiting lists to be on yearbook committee or school whatever club. If you wanted to do all the things, you could do all the things, and I
Right.
feel like in a small community, it's the same thing. You wanna help out, by golly, please help out because there's just not enough of us to be able to not do stuff. So,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think that's awesome. Like, for people that have high levels of energy and wanna commit, go rural because
Right.
you'll
Right.
find a space.
Yeah, and I find too that sometimes it's thinking about some of our rural organizations and the way being more flexible and
Yep.
getting to get more young people, and to figure out
Yeah.
how to do that. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've always been pretty engaged in my community, and when we moved to Marcel too, I was traveling tons.
Yeah.
So then when I finally settled, it's like, oh, maybe I'll go on that. I got recruited to go on the township board, and then now then it was like then hospital board, which is a whole big undertaking. That's
Yeah.
a whole couple podcasts to talk about with rural healthcare. But
Oh my
but
gosh, yeah.
I think, you meet people in communities and somebody's like, oh, the head of the rural electric, their chair of their township board, and they're on this or whatever. There's so many people wearing hats, so it's sort of like getting the word out there. And I
Yeah.
think it is that committing for people. They're so busy. Yeah, how do you make it manageable? I know that, you do a ton of things, but I also know that you've been involved in United Way too. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's,
I was on the board for United Way of Northeastern Minnesota. I was on their board for 9 years. They finally had to be like, "Julie, you can't our bylaws don't allow you to stay on our board," because it's just an awesome organization, and it's it's that same concept, though, of
Mhm.
what I love about United Way and what I love about other organizations. You don't no one person has to provide the entire budget of United Way. If we
Right.
all just give our what we're comfortable with, that united power of that impact, it's just everybody just gives what you can give, whether it's time, energy, or money, not just to United Way, but just life itself,
Hmm.
right? And what we can give changes as we get, through different phases. And we talked about that at United Way board. There's times in people's lives where they have time they can give, but they don't have money,
Right.
or they have energy, or where they can commit and do things. Um, and sometimes people only have, like, I shouldn't say only have money. That seems like a terrible problem to have, where they have money, but they don't have time, right? And so they can give that and it can feed into this, the 30 some partner organizations that are supported. Just, I just love that concept of that united effort for success. When you look at the partner organizations with United Way, the 30 different organizations, some of them are small. And for them to compete for funds in a world of people competing for funds is really tough. They may have one or two staff, but they have great missions, they have great outcomes, but they're not going to have a big Facebook presence, or they're trying to, like I said, compete otherwise. With United Way working the way it is they have a chance of getting some funds through these donations that they otherwise wouldn't get. And I think that's what I love about it is that it's helping out all of these organizations. Plus they have their own programs, and it's us taking care of us. Like they're saying was give where you live. And I just really appreciated that mission of theirs where we so often don't actually know all the needs in our community. Some of us are very sheltered from that for whatever reason, but United Way kind of highlights what some of those challenges are within our community and gives us an opportunity to help fix those problems, whether it's food insecurity, whether it's elder care, whether it's whatever it is. There's just so much good that's done by that organization, not just that one in particular, just throughout our state. And most people have no idea that that work's being done. So I was really grateful to be a part of that board and see how much work is being done to just lift people up in this region because the world's really hard and there's a lot of people that they aren't looking for a handout, they're just looking for a hand up. Just just help me up and I will walk on my own, but I can't get up.
Yeah.
And so I love that organization for the work it does. And like I said, I love that at one point in my career when I first started donating to them when I was fresh out of college, it was $5 a month. That's all I could afford. I was I was scraping by. I struggled sometimes to buy cat litter, but my dang cat was so cute that I knew he was just gonna stick around. But at some point in my life, it was $5 a month, and that's all I could give. And but that $5, you know, it still made a difference because it was collected with all of my neighbors and everybody else that donated. So I don't know. I just think it's such a cool concept.
Yeah, I like it too, and I think it's another way to meet people in your community and be
Yeah,
part of something. And I think, just in highly politically charged times, it's a way to go in and not have politics, be part of the discussion and
yep,
I think it's a way to sort of knock down barriers and get to know people and work on projects together where you're like-minded. And so I love that piece because I think you get to know people as people when you're
yeah,
working with them, and that just changes the whole tenor. And I think that's the one thing with the work at 100 Real Women. It's like if we can just get to know each other as people and we can figure out how to better support each other, then you
yep,
can navigate as the stuff comes that you might not agree on, or you might not have information on. You learn, you
yeah.
just learn. So I think that whole being engaged in continuous learning is super, super important. And so thinking about, where you're at in your career, and you referenced this a little bit, and growing up, it, did you, you know, is, did you know what you wanted to be? Did you ever think you'd end up doing what you're doing?
No, not a chance. One, I definitely was not gonna work for the mining industry. There was 0. I didn't even know what it was. And when I did find out about the mining industry, it was through anti-mining organizations that I belonged to.
Mhm.
And so everything I heard about mining was death and destruction. And then I moved to the Iron Range, and then I saw it firsthand, and I learned about it. And so I definitely did not see this coming. But the teaching aspect of it and giving presentations at 100 if you talk to my mom, she loves to tell people that she would go in my bedroom and I would have my stuffed animals lined up and I would be teaching them.
I
I don't
love
know what
it.
I was teaching them, and I would read to them. And so I always wanted to be a teacher like that was like I knew I loved teaching, and I didn't go to school for teaching because at some point I was like, "No, I just wanna go for science." And but I loved being a teaching assistant when I was an undergrad. That was one of my work study jobs. I did a TA, my 2nd year of grad school to pay for my stipend, and so I love teaching. So, yeah, there's always been I love an audience, I don't know. I love students. I love getting to share knowledge. So that part's always been there, without a doubt. And then my love of science, like my parents I was that little nerd that at the end of the school year would ask my parents to buy me workbooks to do during the summer. Like what is wrong with me? There's something seriously wrong with a child who's like, "I'd like some workbooks for the summer." But I did. So, just have always had like a huge curiosity. And I think that's why I love mining is it mixes a whole bunch of different types of science and engineering and technology all together. And I'm never going to fully understand our industry because it's too it's there's just too much. And so I always get to keep learning. So that's yeah. So maybe I sort of knew what I was gonna get into someday. I just didn't know it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about teaching too, and like your work with, policymakers and just different organizations because you're teaching, you're
Yeah,
educating, and I'm always a big believer, the better informed people are, the better decisions they make, and
yeah.
so you are right where you were gonna be with with your stuffed animals. I love it. So
They
you
didn't talk back at least,
they didn't talk
unlike my
about
actual
yeah,
live students who
not
did.
like not like legislators, no, just kidding. So, when you think about, I mean, you are busy. You're a busy person. So, as you said, 70 nights, in a
Right.
hotel. What do you do for fun and how do you recharge? How do you how self-care? What do you
I
practice or what's your advice? I'm always good at, well, here's my advice for you.
I had I had fun discussing this question with my coworker. She was just started laughing at me. She goes, "How are you gonna answer that?" Um, I actually feel like I maintain a decent balance. One, it helps that I love what I do.
Mhm.
Like, I don't hate my job. I love my job, and so that alone helps. Um, but it is a hard job, and emotionally, because it is a controversial topic. It's a very heated topic. There are big feelings about it. I'm a very sensitive person. My husband, friends will gladly tell you how sensitive I am, but that's not a reason for me not to do this kind of work. So self-care often it's all about friendships. I'm married to an amazing person. My biggest piece of advice to people is if you're going to get married, you need that is the biggest decision you're going to make, and it's going to affect your career. Who you marry affects your career. Who you marry affects your friendships. Who you marry affects your finance. Like it is, and not everyone has a choice. Like right, not everyone has a choice of whether they're going to get married or not. But if you have that choice, please recognize this is a very serious choice, and you want somebody like that is going to benefit your life. And I did. I married an amazing person who he is instant stress relief because he's just a very caring, kind person. So I have that going for me. He believes in me. He's a big cheerleader. But I also have like my family is super supportive, has my back. And then I just friendships. I can't tell young women enough. Friendships matter. Your friendships are so critical. Don't dump all of your energy into your significant other or your friends are going to be who keeps you afloat um during all the time. Like I just have such a oh my god, my friends are amazing. And um that is, whether it's, snowshoeing up in the Boundary Waters to go look at the Hagman Lake pictographs or getting out kayaking or just like it's just spending time with friends is massive. That's how I recharge. So and getting outside, which has not been easy this winter. It's
Yeah.
kind of like this week's really nice, but last week was not so great. But yeah, that's kind of what I do is just spend time with people, and I just have great people in my life, and we all can make that choice of how good the people are in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of one of our board members when we first started. I remember when we first met, she talked about like with mentorship and friendship that she just always sees, you got to have five, five, five
Yep.
people around you at all times because they're the ones who they're gonna let you know what's really up and they're gonna be there to support you, but they're also gonna challenge you and they're gonna, help you through. So I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, you need friends that push you. Like you don't want yes men. You want people who are more than willing to challenge you. I've just always had those friends, whether it was earlier poor dating decisions when I was younger, and I had friends who said like, "This is not good." And if your friends truly love you, and I've said this with colleagues too, even I have a couple colleagues who are always willing to course correct me.
Yes.
And at first it was really hard until I realized they are doing this because they genuinely care about me. Because otherwise they'd let me fail. And they're not, which means they genuinely care. and recognizing that in your friends, if they're pushing you and challenging you, it's because they actually do care, not because they're whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, when you think about colleagues too, I went back mid-career and got my master's in
Mm.
organizational leadership, and so what I did for my big project was how political leaders surround themselves, and it was
Oh,
really interesting because having people around you that are gonna challenge your thinking and push you, and
yeah,
it was very interesting. I learned a ton, but it is you want people around you that are different than you, and of
yeah,
course you want value sharing values is super important, but even, in that work setting, you want people around you that are different than you and think differently.
yes,
And that's the beauty. It just takes us right back to local government and some of the things you're involved in. You need a wide variety of people because it helps you challenge your thinking too, I think. So I love that. And so sort of switching gears and thinking about this a little bit, what do you like to read? What are you reading? What are you watching? I mean, what are you watching? That's
I'm
always
not
something interesting.
I'm not watching anything right now. We, I mean, I should probably not admit this, but I am a Marvel movies fan.
Oh, that's
I
good.
I I'm a sucker for the Marvel movies, and I know that's so cliche and people like, "Really, superhero movies?" But see when I fly though, flying is when I watch artsy movies. This is how I do this. And then regular my rest of my life, it's just popcorn movies. But uh, reading, I have a whole stack of books that I really need to get started on. I kind of haven't been reading much. I'm a news junkie, and so what I need to do is stop reading so much of the news and read more books because I tend to, yeah. But I did buy the Gales of November, the
Ah,
untold story about Edmund Fitzgerald that just came out
yeah.
not that long ago. So I'm gonna read that. I kind of read a mix. I can't say I read fiction or I'll read Diary of a Wimpy Kid if I have it in my hands. I'll read any I was a kid reading cereal boxes, so I'm really glad we didn't have cell phones when I was a kid because I never would have got my nose out of it. But um yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited to read the Edmund Fitzgerald one. I think that'll be good. And with my connection to it with iron mining, I think I'm excited to read it for that.
yeah, I've read a couple different I have to pick that up because I've read a couple different books and for about the lake about that time and the lake and for those of us who have had the good fortune of being able to be by that lake, it's
Yeah.
just amazing and being there I remember about 5 years ago, I was in Tofty during
Mm,
huge, I mean, talk about gales. It was just amazing. And then I
yeah.
think about this and boats being up on that lake and people who aren't, who haven't had that experience of Lake Superior from other places. And it's like, yeah, it's like I mean, we're talking serious waves. I mean, it's like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
big
It's
gales.
and my parents lived in Duluth when that night that the Fitz went down,
Mm,
and my mom always says, like, it was a terrible night. It
right.
was it was a
Wow.
wicked storm, and it was just a really like, she remembers it. It's written into her core, and for me, going into water resources science, I went to UMD, which has a large lakes observatory, has a Blue Heron, which is a research vessel that goes out on Lake Superior
Right.
and beyond. And I've spent time on research cruises going out on Lake
Oh,
Superior. And
wow.
yeah, when you're out there, you can't see shore
Right.
and you know it's a powerful lake. And if you're me, you take Dramamine because your inner ears do not like it. And it's a powerful lake and it's amazing that we have this resource. Like, there's just times I've only ever lived in the 218 area code, but I tell people if you go to school for water resources science, you have no reason to live anywhere else
That's right. Yeah.
because you have Lake Superior and you have the boundary waters and you have just all of these lakes and rivers and it's just kind of a magical little place that I'm glad not everybody's learned about. So we can sort of keep it to ourselves. But
Yeah. No, absolutely. And when I talk to people who aren't from Minnesota or have never been around the Great Lakes and to talk about, Lake Superior, I think it's hard for people to imagine, but how amazing for you to be out on, I mean, I've
Oh, it
been
was
out on the lake a little bit, but to be out on a
so
research
cool.
vessel, and that must be amazing,
It
amazing.
is, and the fact we have this right here in Duluth, and so many people don't realize that we have one of the top freshwater research places in the entire world, and it's in Duluth, and
Right.
we have these huge assets that people just don't fully recognize, and I didn't when I was even picking where I went to college. I didn't fully understand because 1, I was, 17, and just had no idea of the capabilities that we have here for education and for everything. So,
Yeah, yeah, you forget about minimize it, I think sometimes because we have all this water and
yeah,
recreation and but what a like UMD is just that yeah, that research center is just absolutely incredible. What a
yeah.
resource. So that's yeah, that's cool. I'm watching right now, and we just finished it. It's Shonda Rhimes, but it's called The Residence, and it's sort of a
Oh,
murder mystery. It's
we
wild.
watched that. I
Did you?
say we 'cause Matt and I did we just finished that. Oh,
Did,
hold on. Did you finish it or are you still in
we
it?
did. We just finished it last night.
That was see, that's right. That's like one of those kind of more artsy,
Yeah,
like, that was a very creatively done.
right.
Oh my gosh, that was a hoot.
It
That
was.
was great. I
It
love
was.
that.
It was. I had to uh, push my husband through it a little bit because he couldn't quite get into it. But then it was like, oh, once it started to go, then it was like, oh yeah, this is amazing. So
Because it was a little weird and
yeah,
just the way they kind of
yeah,
kept do yeah.
yeah. So that was sort of fun. So that was sort of a. At first, I thought, oh, I don't know if I would watch this, and then I watched it. It was like, oh my god, it was great. It was just such a
Yeah.
unique. She's very unique, so that's sort
It
of
was
fun.
very unique.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, in we go through these streaming fits where we'll just like boom right through something. So I love it. Um, so and I know you are a super positive person, and that's why I love being around you because I think it's very important. But how do you stay positive and just thinking more too about you know how do you keep moving forward when things are tough and in that what gives you hope for the future? I mean, that whole positive
We're
move
still
forward.
here. You
Yeah.
know, I I was a I've always one of my coworkers called me, when I was at Hit Tech, he told me I was a relentless optimist.
I love it. I love it,
I
Relentless
was like,
Optimist.
"Excuse me?" He's like, "You just don't stop." Um, I think some of it's frankly, I think some of it's wiring. Like, I've recognized I'm just partly lucky to be wired the way I am. And it's going when I went through breast cancer back in 2020, I mean, that was the worst time. And I'm sitting there finding silver linings going through chemo during a global pandemic. And I'm like, well, at least like I
Right.
thought there is just some aspect of it where I'm just wired this way. And I do not take that for granted ever. But it does kind of go back to when when we started the conversation, when I look at my grandma, both my grandmas, one was widowed in her early 50s and had to figure out in her early 50s, and this was like back in the day, right? Back in 76, trying to figure out how she was going to take care of herself
Mm,
with my grandpa passing away. And she went to work at a dental office and she worked till she was like 88, like 1 day a week. And she just kept trucking on and kept walking to work. And she just maintained, whatever. And my other grandma, she had when I run through, like, the list of things that happened to her, the fact she was ever positive is just stunning to me. I mean, her mom abandoned the family, her father can I say I'm just gonna say he killed
yeah.
himself. She
Mhm.
lost a son. She had, like, my because one of my uncles died when he was, like, 5. She
Mhm.
had all of these, like, just different and when her mom left, she never came back. My grandma never spoke to her mom ever again. Like, she went and married someone and, like, had another family. Like,
Wow.
she just had all this what today some people would completely buckle and say, "I can't my life is over. I can't do anything because of this," all these different things. My grandma's like, "This is life. You just keep going." And I just for myself, I only get 1 shot here, last I checked. if I had a previous life, I don't remember it, so I'm assuming in my next life, I won't remember this one. So I get one shot here, and things are going to go wrong. Like, breast cancer at 41, had just all of that. I've lost jobs. I've had my husband got laid off from HipTech, he's one of the, casualties in that layoff. Like, things go wrong. People, you lose people, everything, but guess what? You're still here, and there's still a lot of beauty, and if you struggle to see beauty in the world, go outside. There's a gorgeous full moon the other night. Like,
Mhm.
there's just a lot of beauty, and there's a lot of joy, and there's a lot of good stuff in the world, but if you only look at the negative, you're only gonna see the negative. I just get one shot here, and I don't know how long it's gonna be. Like, I am predisposed to, like, get cancer. I am, like, got the bad cancer gene. My dad died of pancreatic cancer, my uncle died of pancreatic cancer, their first cousin died of pancreatic cancer. I'm like, "I get one shot. I'm gonna love it, and I'm gonna get through the not great times because I have people that I love. I have people that love me. I have an adorable cat." And I'm including him because he's so cute. I can't believe he hasn't jumped on my
Well,
lap.
that's what I was gonna say, where yeah, I
I
love it.
have a job that I find fulfilling, and I stay positive because the alternative, I don't wanna spend my I get this tiny little flash of life, tiny little flash, like, it even if I live to 103 like my great grandma, or 102 and then, like, a handful of months,
Wow.
it is still this tiny little flash, and I want to enjoy it. So it's not that I don't get crabby. Ask anybody that knows me, I get fireball crabby, but I don't hang on to it too long because I don't wanna carry that energy into this little tiny world and little tiny life I get to have.
That's amazing perspective, and I had to write down relentless optimist. I love that because I feel the same way. It's like, there's enough bad things. You gotta look, where's the positive?
And you
And
gotta look where you have control, right?
right,
There's a lot of but there's stuff I can control my attitude.
right.
I can control my contribution to relationships. I can control my energy. I can control my time. Like, there's just a lot of things I can control. There's a lot I can't. So it's a serenity prayer or whatever you wanna call it if you're a person of faith or not. It's just I, um, I wanna find joy in this life because just look outside. Like,
Mhm.
there's this amazing world we get to live in that has rivers and trees and critters, and it's a truly beautiful earth, and so I just try to stay focused on that.
So, what do you think we could all do to better support rural women? I mean, that's sort of our whole
Oh,
goal.
no.
What what do you think?
We have to be more I think we have to be more welcoming. I still think one of our biggest struggles is that, once again, there aren't enough of us for us to be cliquey
Right.
because there's just not enough of us. And so I think we sometimes in rural areas have a bad tendency to uh not be welcoming to newcomers, or we play the game of, well, my family's lived here 100 years, so you just aren't as important because you don't have this legacy here, and you don't understand because you're not from here, and you blah 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 blah. We don't get that luxury of being snobs.
Mhm.
Like, if we really want rural areas to thrive, we want rural women to thrive, we have to say, I am so excited that of all the places in the universe you could choose to live, you have chosen this little community. You have chosen to give us your energy and your commitment and just your being. Thank you so much for being here. Like, we have to invite them. There's a joke about Minnesotans and the Minnesota Nice where we'll give you directions to anywhere but our house.
Yeah.
And we have to stop that. And we
Yeah.
have to stop. I'm not from up here. And there are definitely cliques where that group of friends has been friends since kindergarten and they don't let anyone new in. They are not the people who are going to lead our region and our rural areas. It's the people like some of the friends I have where when I first moved up to the range, they said, "We are so excited to have you here. Here's all my friends too." And,
Right.
I have a couple girlfriends that they were like, "Let me introduce you to the town of Chisholm." It's the center of the universe for your listeners who don't know. They love saying that. It cracks me up. My in-laws are from there and they'll agree. But I have like some friends that were very much just like, here are all of our friends. Go skiing with us. Do you want to go to dinner with us? Do you want to do this? Like, and we need all the people we can get to support rural women. We just have to be better at not being scared of newcomers and bring them in. And maybe they can't join us for everything, but at least extend the invite so they feel welcome. And I think that's key. I mean, obviously, not even being a like childcare is actually a big thing. So I think that's needs to be fully recognized on the struggle that that is in rural areas. I have friends that I swear they're trying to figure out daycare before they've even tried to get pregnant
Right.
because they know it's going to be a challenge. And that that is something for women, for rural women. We have to have options for that. Or we need flexible employers. Employers who are willing to recognize that there are different phases in a woman's life where she may be managing the kid thing right now, but boy, if you support her through this time, she's going to give you more than that time back, and she's at some point going to be out of that phase and she's going to remember what you did to support her during it. And so I think there's some need for employers for that. But yeah, I think just being more inclusive and more welcoming is a big start, and recognizing our rural communities are going to shrivel if we don't bring in new blood.
Right.
And at
Yeah,
some point, all of our families were new blood into a community.
that's
So
right.
trying to be more welcoming because it's just the first generation. That's all it is. They're just
Yeah.
the first generation. And I
Yeah.
say this as somebody who lives on the Iron Range who hears all the time that unless you have two generations in the ground, you're not a ranger. But my own husband says that, so shake my fist at him.
My credibility, because I'm new too. We've lived up here 9 years, but my husband's family is from Coleraine, so that and Pengilly,
Oh,
so
you
that's my
gave me
cred. But that's sort of, that's it is sort of a wild deal of being from here. I've just really appreciated the time you've taken today, and love sharing about you and. So we always like to close with this question, which is sort of a two-parter of, what advice would you give your younger self? And what about young rural women trying to navigate things? I mean,
whew. My advice to myself would be, don't date until you're 29 and you meet Matt, and I don't know that I'm kidding. Ah,
I hear you.
it's it's such an important thing. My advice to my younger self, I don't I think I would just say, "Don't worry, things are gonna work out. Just 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 keep plugging away." I worked my tail off when I was younger, so I wouldn't give my younger self advice not to. And I'm not gonna say I don't have regrets. It's hard if I say I don't have a ton of advice for my younger self, it makes it sound like I think I did everything right, and I know I didn't. I think it is just like, "Don't worry,
Hmm.
you'll figure stuff out. You'll get your act together. You're good.
Hmm.
Just keep rolling." My advice to younger rural women is, "Don't worry, you'll figure stuff out." Um, show up, get off your phone. There there is social media should be used to figure out where events are being held that you want to go to. Go on Facebook and go, "Oh, there's this event going on? Cool. Interested going." And then just get off of the thing. We're not going to build communities via our phones. If anything in rural communities, it's We have a couple bar slash restaurants up here where I live, and once upon a time, people went to those as the third spaces, and people aren't going out to see people anymore because people are feeling like, well, I'm seeing people on my phone, and we need to get out in the third spaces. We need to be in places outside of our workplace, outside of home. We have to be building those networks, and it's not a networky thing like a corporate business thing. It's building a web, because the only thing that's gotten me through cancer during a pandemic was having this web of people, and the only thing that's gotten other people in my life through their tough times was having a web of us holding them up. You don't build those relationships online. Get out, volunteer, go to go to the events. Even if by the end of the week you're shot, you're tired, recognize when you're tired and really need a recharge, and recognize when you're tired but will be recharged going out. Because yes, there are some days where I'm like, guess what? I'm laying on the couch and watching Captain
Hmm.
America for the 77,000th time.
I love
But
it.
then there's other times where I'm like, I'm just tired because it's been a long week. I will feel better once I get out. Like, so just recognize that. But we just, phones serve a function, but they also really hurting our communities, and they're hurting our sense of community. They are hurting our ability to see people as more than a caricature. And we have to be having conversations with real people in real life. That is what's going to keep rural communities thriving, is us being together, actually in rooms and in spaces. And that is my advice, is just show up, get out, get off your phone. Now I sound like an old crabby person. I'm partly telling myself this. Give what you can. Recognize that how much you can give is going to fluctuate over time. And yeah, I could probably just keep going. I'm gonna stop because I'm full of unsolicited advice.
No, that was great advice, and yeah, I hear you giving advice to yourself too on phone because I go on and off where I'll be like completely off social media, and then I'm like, oh my god, then I can't help myself. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
a tough thing. So well, I really appreciate your time. You're amazing, and
So are you.
no, I just am so excited that you took the time to do this, and I just think it's so important for all of us to learn more about each other and figure out how we can work together. And what you shared
Yep.
today is incredible. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
and we'll stay connected. And
Yes.
I'm so excited to be able to share this podcast. So thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Teresa.